Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk to you guys all about how I was accepted to the MBA program and my process applying and what the experience has been like since then. So if you don't know, my name is Pamela. I blog over at starringpamela.com. I had recently asked if you guys wanted to know more about my experience applying to the MBA school and my experience so far, and everyone seemed to be really for it, so here we go. A little bit about me and my background. I studied at Elmhurst College as an undergrad student. I majored in international business and graduated in February of 2013. I actually graduated a semester early. I had been working a little bit after that, mostly in customer service roles, and I had previously been thinking about going back to school but hadn't actually done it until this point. My original goal was to go to law school, so my plan was always to take the LSAT shortly after I graduated and starting my applications to various law schools. That isn't what I want to do anymore, so I decided to change and started aiming towards going back to school for my MBA. After my undergrad years, I was kind of burnt out from school. I didn't really want to go back, so I took a few years to work. I actually hadn't been planning on going back to school this early. I'd been planning to wait a few more years at least, but every so often I would get interested again and start looking up graduate schools and looking at programs. One of the most common things that I needed was to take the GMAT test. The GMAT was really one of the things that was delaying the process because I also didn't really want to take that one. Just like the LSAT, I really was not interested in taking a standardized test again. I was not interested in having to pay that much money to take it and possibly retake it, or any of the classes or the books or any of the other study materials. So I kept putting it off and putting it off, but eventually I really did want to get back to school. So I figured maybe in a few years I'll finally be ready and I'll just start studying. So last year I was at coffee with a friend and she had mentioned that she was starting to study for her master's degree. And I kind of asked her about it. She was doing online classes for school out of state. And when I asked her why she picked that school, she mentioned that one of the main reasons was that she didn't have to take any of the standardized tests for it. So for her master's program, she needed to take the GRE, but she was also not interested in standardized testing. So she did find a program and looked for programs specifically that didn't require that. And that was one of the first times I really saw that you didn't need to have taken the exam in order to be able to apply for a school. A lot of schools won't even look at your application unless you're part of like executive management, and that's not something that I'm a part of right now. So I figured I would give it a shot, look at schools and see which ones didn't require the test and then apply to those first. Because I decided to go that route, it did take out a lot of schools, including a lot of highly competitive schools that I really wanted to try to get into. I don't really mind because I really did not want to take that test, but that really did limit which schools I would be applying to. While I was looking for schools, one of the schools that came up was Elmhurst College, where I did my undergrad studies. So I was looking at the program, looking at how much the cost would be, doing all my research, and I decided that that was the school I wanted to go to again for my MBA. The reason I hadn't previously considered that school in my first couple searches for graduate programs was because I had been told that you don't want to go to the same school. Some of the reasons for that included that you show that you don't really get out of your comfort zone, or that it's not that different, or that you want to get like a bigger name brand school when you go to graduate school. But ultimately when I asked around, including managers at my current job, no one really seemed to care much where you went. They just cared if you had the degree at the end of the day. So I realized that it really doesn't affect much, and it really wouldn't matter if I did or did not go to the same school, and it just worked out that that school was the one I wanted to go to again. So around the time when I picked that I wanted to go to Elmhurst College and apply again was probably January, February of this year. I had previously gone to an informational session on the graduate programs in March, and that's when I really made the decision that that was the school that I wanted to go to for my graduate program. I did a blog post on it, so I'll definitely link it below. I arrived there, the director for the graduate programs gave a little speech, and it was very nice and very well presented. And of course, they clearly want all the students to consider their programs and ultimately apply and go to that school. So that was obviously very well done and very well thought out. After that, we kind of broke off into individual sections. I was in a room with about maybe 15 other prospective students. Kind of went around the room, talked a little bit about what we did. There were some people that wanted to get a new degree for a new career. There were people who wanted to further their career. People who had been in school very recently, within the past couple of years like me, and there were other people who hadn't been in school for years but really wanted to go back. So it was a program that was attracting a lot of people from the Chicagoland area. When we were there, the director for the program, who had actually been one of my professors in undergrad, introduced himself as well, gave us more information on the program, and explained how the classes would work. While we were there, the director explained that he didn't really have a deadline for us to apply, that the college as a whole did have a March deadline, but he was still filling the classes and he was still accepting students even throughout the summer. So I wasn't in a big rush to be able to finish my application, but I did start it. The application itself was fairly simple. You just fill out your basic information, and there was a spot for you to be able to fill out where you did undergrad, so that was easy. And there was another spot where you could fill in your work history. So I pretty much just copied and pasted what was on my resume onto that area. So at the end, you could either enter in your statement of purpose into a box that it had, or you could send that in separately along with your resume. It also required 3 letters of recommendation, so I printed out the form to be able to give to everyone who I was going to ask for letters. All I needed at the end was the letters, and then I also needed to send in my resume and write my statement of purpose. For my transcripts, since I went there in undergrad, they already had those, so I didn't have to worry about that. That was really simple. But I did start talking to people that I wanted to request letters from. For my resume, that was already done, so I was just waiting to finish my statement of purpose to be able to send that in. I asked 3 people at work for letters of recommendation, and they all said that they would do it for me, so that was very nice. I had expected to be done with the application process by April or mid-May at the latest, but I ended up getting sidetracked. So in June, I did get a call from one of the people working at the MBA Admissions office, and they were just asking if I was still interested in applying, and of course I said yes, and I did apologize for taking so long, but she said it wasn't a problem, and she said just to get everything in by mid-July. She said that was the latest that I would be able to apply and keep my previous application. So I said that was fine, I would get it done by then. I did give the forms out to the 3 people that I was going to get letters of recommendation from. For my statement of purpose, I finally wrote that, and I had asked a friend to proofread it, but unfortunately that was when we were starting to get really bad weather, and she wasn't able to proofread it right away, so I had one of my other friends proofread it for me. Finally got that okayed and finished off, so I emailed that in with my resume. So the deadline was on the 15th, which was a Saturday. Basically, my last letter of recommendation and my statement of purpose went in on the Thursday before that. That Thursday, when they finally received all the materials, I got an email saying that I would need to come in for an interview with the director of the program, and it proposed a few times. So I told them I could be there next week on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. and I got that settled. So of course over the weekend I was looking up questions that they'll likely ask for an MBA program, preparing answers for that, and just kind of looking over everything once more to make sure that I didn't ask any questions that could already have been answered just by going on the website or looking at some of the brochures that they had sent me before. On that Wednesday, I left a little early from work because I didn't want to be late. So I got in my car and headed off to get to the school campus. I was leaving really early. I think I left at like 3:30, and in the afternoon rush hour, it's about an hour to get there, so I was still extremely early. I didn't want to take any chances, did not want to be late, so I headed down there. I was about hour early, so I actually went to the campus library, sat in there for a little bit, continued preparing, and the campus is really small, so the library was right across from the building where my interview was going to be. So 12 minutes beforehand, I left the library and walked over to the building. When I got there, the door to the building was open, but then I realized that the office was closed and it was dark. So I knocked a few times. I couldn't find anybody. I called the person who had set up the interview to see if maybe it was supposed to have been moved, but she didn't answer. And so at that point, I wasn't panicking per se. I just figured that maybe the person interviewing me was running a little late. Across from the offices, I saw that there were people in the conference room. I couldn't really tell who it was, but I figure worst comes to worst, maybe I could ask them. I hung out a little bit at the couches outside of the conference room. I was pretty much just trying not to freak out because I was a little worried that maybe it had been moved and just no one had updated me. And I'm generally a pretty anxious person, so I was a little worried. But it turns out I didn't need to be worried. The people came out from the conference room, and that was actually another interview that had been scheduled before mine, so I was in the right place. And then, of course, the director of the program recognized me. Like I said, he had been one of my professors in undergrad, and he had been the one doing the graduate informational session, so he recognized me from there as well. The first thing he really wanted to know was just a little bit more about what I had done since graduation. He had seen my resume but wanted to hear from me kind of what I had been doing. So I explained my job to him and just answered the questions that he had. After I did that, he explained a little bit more about the cohorts again. I had remembered most of that information already from the informational session, so I didn't really need the whole overview, but he was very kind and explained everything again and asked me, like, if I did admit you, do you have a preference for either class? And I said, yes, I would prefer the Tuesday class, but I said I'm really flexible. Wherever you need to put me would be totally fine with me. I would make either one work. So he seemed to really like that answer, and he also asked why I thought that this was the right time for me to go back to school. And I was very honest. I explained that the company where I work at is very competitive in terms of there are lots of good employees and we don't often leave, so whenever a job does open up, it is usually open up to external candidates as well, but the internal candidates are the ones that I'm always up against. So I just wanted to be able to have a little something extra to make myself more competitive. And I also explained that I work in the event industry, so I would be expected to travel more, and I didn't want to leave school off until later when I had a job that required more travel from me, that I would have to then balance if I wanted to go to class or if I wanted to fulfill my obligations at work, and I didn't want to get to that point. So he did seem to think that those were very good reasons. And at that point he just asked me, he said, so do you think you're ready for the program and ready to go back to school? And I said yes, because that was honestly how I felt, and I said I was ready and I was prepared, at which point he said, well, then I'm going to admit you to school. Congratulations. So I was very excited. So he did put me in the Tuesday class, and I was really excited about that since that was the one that I wanted. And then after that, he said, we're actually having a reception for all admitted students. You can meet some of your future classmates, and there's going to be wine and cheese. You want to come? And of course I said yes, because who would turn down that invitation? And so he said, okay, great. If you want to wait for me outside on the couches, I will go ahead and finish up some of the paperwork to admit you, and we can walk over together. And I went, that's totally fine. So at the reception, they had name tags pre-printed for everyone who had RSVP'd, but since I had just been accepted, clearly I didn't have one, so I was able to write mine out, and then they gave me a bunch of presents, which I actually put up in my back to school haul video. After I got my name tag and all my little goodies, they pointed me over to where all the MBA students were sitting, and I went over, joined one of the tables, and got to know some of the other students. So we kind of chatted about our career background. Eventually one of the marketing people stopped by our table to kind of ask how we had all heard of the program, and I was the only alum out of everybody, but everyone else seemed to be from the area. While we didn't specifically say so, I think a big reason for why we all wanted to go to the Elmhurst College program was because it is a 2-year program part-time, and the program is a lot less expensive than some of the other ones that I had seen. So I'm guessing that that was also 2 of the main driving factors for everyone that had applied. After a little bit of time, the director of the program asked everybody to go to the middle of the Founders Lounge, which was the room we were in. He gave a very lovely speech and told everybody, like, in 2 years' time, you guys are going to be graduating. You're all going to be at the chapel across the way, and he was giving a very nice description of what graduation day would look like. So while I thought that maybe we were getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, it was certainly nice, and I really appreciated that as well. So after he finished, we all broke up again into our sections. One of the students and I went off to get a glass of wine, so that was very nice. We all kind of chatted a little bit more, and shortly after that, they started the behind the scenes tour. I ended up not going to that just because I already knew the campus really well. One of the other students and I, the one that went to go get wine with me, we ended up getting some of the food and then staying and chatting for a little bit longer. Since the campus is quite far from me, I don't think I would have gone if my interview hadn't been right beforehand or on the same day. So I'm really happy that I was able to get to experience that and go and meet a few new people, even if they're not necessarily in my class. After a few days, I did receive my email saying, "Congratulations, you've been accepted." The email wasn't very personalized, it was a very generic email. It had a form that I had to fill out with my immunization records. I wanted to send that in at the same time as the rest of my form, so I also needed to send in a deposit and a signed form that I was going to enroll. Since my dad didn't have time to look for my records right away, I didn't really get to filling them out. While I was waiting for him to find my records, I actually got a letter in the mail, a physical copy of my acceptance letter, and this one was a lot more personalized. Because I did my undergrad there, I had a voucher for my first class for free, and I also had my deposit waived, so I actually didn't even need to turn that in. I just needed to sign my voucher, and I needed to turn in my intent of enrollment without the deposit and my medical records. I filled everything out, scanned it, and emailed it back in. A little bit after that, I got my email saying I was ready to register for classes and to go ahead and log in and do that. So I logged in, filled out my classes, registered. At that point, I had to also apply for financial aid. I actually ended up needing my 2015 tax returns, which I thought was a little strange since 2016 was previous calendar year to this one. But I wasn't going to ask too many questions, so I went ahead, found my 2015 records, and filled everything out. After a few days when I logged in, I already had my financial aid awards loaded in. I went ahead, accepted all of those. The point where I'm at now is I'm waiting for orientation on August 19th. I'll be filming that part after orientation. Classes will be starting on the week of the 28th, so my first day of classes will be on August 29th, and I'm just getting everything settled. So thank you so much for listening to me up until this point. I'm going to go ahead and put in the orientation bit now. I hope that it was a good time. Like I said, now I'm just waiting for that. I'm waiting for classes to start, and I'm really excited. Thank you.